back, guys. We're gonna start with the intro.
It's an honor to be here. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming. We really
course.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, should we give it a go?
Let's go.
Oh.
Three psychos.
Yeah.
Can't believe we nailed that.
Amazing.
That was so good.
Yeah.
Okay, should we
You
begin?
start us off here?
Sure, I'll start us off. Okay, why don't you just start, where did you grow up and, how was it? Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
A little bit about my autobiography.
Yes. Yep.
Sure. So I was born in Queens, New York. I was born in Manhattan until I was a few months old, but really in Queens. I lived in Forest Hills, Queens until I was 9 or so. My parents were both lawyers. My dad worked for the state. And when the younger of my two sisters was born, Maya, who's 8 years younger than me, also Maya, although she spells it with an I, not a Y, the right way or the wrong way, she spells it the wrong way, depending on who you ask.
How old is she?
Maya now is, she just turned 21.
Wow.
So I also just gave away how old I am, if you were paying attention. My parents were then priced out of New York City because it's an expensive place to live, and they moved to a small suburb next to Albany called Bethlehem, New York, where I lived until I was 18. It was I have a very great relationship with my family, but I found Bethlehem to be very stifling. I always wanted to come back to a big city, so after I was in high school, I took a gap year actually, and I lived in Taipei for a year.
Wow.
Just like many SAR students go to seminary or yeshiva or whatever Israel gap year. I did something similar, except in Taiwan.
How did you choose to do that?
It's a good question. How did I choose to go to Taiwan? I'd studied Mandarin in high school. I had a cool opportunity to do that, and it wound up being a really frustrating language program. I think they went through 5 teachers in 6 years or something like that, but it at least sparked the interest in me. And I'd wanted to study abroad for a long period of time, and it was much easier to get a visa and go to Taiwan than it was to China. So that's where I wound up. I lived with different host families there for the year, and I went to high school with Taiwanese students for an additional year, so that was a really cool experience. And then I went back. I moved to Chicago. Always like to be in big cities, the University of Chicago. And then when I graduated, I moved back to Taiwan for a year. I worked as an English teacher, and then I moved back here. I worked for the Yeshiva of Flatbush and now at SAR. Yeah.
How was it like living there?
How is it like living in Taiwan? Taiwan is a really great place to live. If you one of the disadvantages of New York City is you only get the urban side of things. And I'm a big nature person too. I like hiking, I like exploring really natural locations. And living in Taipei would be like living in New York, except if you just take the A train or the F train to the end, you can go climb a mountain and go hiking. I've never seen a city that combines the two, nature and urban activities so well. Taiwan is extremely safe. You could leave your wallet probably anywhere and come back the next day and it would still be there. Everyone's extremely kind and extremely willing to help you. There's just this kind of very soft-spoken personality that's very calm. It's kind of the opposite of the I'm walking here New York personality. So it was really great. At the same time, it can be very conservative, very boxed in, not a very think outside the box kind of place. So sometimes, people going to open a bank account in Taiwan was a process that took 2 hours. They kept correcting me because I needed to sign a seal with my name in Mandarin and English characters, and the seal was wrong, so I had to go get a new seal. They made me tear up my signature 5 times. So that kind of is very indicative of how a lot of Taiwanese society works. Very tunnel vision.
Would you say you liked living in Taiwan as a student or a teacher better?
It's a good question. I think when I was a student, and maybe different SAR students will encounter this in gap years, obviously there are a lot of, I was 18 and there was a lot of freedom, but also I was living with host families and there's a lot of great aspects of that. But it was a little bit stifling. I was ready just to go off on my own. And then as a teacher, I had complete, I was just living on my own. I had complete freedom. And I think the people I was able to meet, the things I was able to do, I could go and travel around Taiwan. I did a bike trip around a large part of the island. So all of those things were really great and, it's definitely stick in my mind more. But both were great experiences.
Are you still in touch with your host families?
It's a good question. So I was for a while, and I still have their contacts. I'm still like, Facebook friends with them, whatnot, and I could reach out. I don't regularly contact them. Two of them I was pretty close to for a while, and when I went back, I would usually reach out to them because I'd been back a number of times since then. I was actually back this last summer. There was a job, but actually this last summer I didn't get a chance to meet up with them, so not so much, but I was 18 then, and that was over 10 years ago now.
I'm curious, like, how is it being a Jew?
How is it being a Jew in Taiwan? Yeah. So you guys ask such great questions. Obviously Taiwan is not a majority or even a, there isn't any significant Jewish community like there is in New York. At the same time, right, Taiwan is a very tolerant place. It's not a place you'd have to worry about wearing a yarmulke or worry about being Jewish in public like some places in the world. There is a Chabad, as there is in many places. So if you're looking for Shabbat services, you'll find them. But that's kind of your, one of your only options. There's a Chabad and then a small group of Reform Jews that meet. If you're looking for kashrut, there's a lot of vegan food in Taiwan. Obviously, people have different standards of eating out. But because of many people there are Buddhists, and much more so than in China. China is much less religious. In Taiwan, there are all these Buddhist vegan restaurants that also can be used for kashrut purposes. So I've actually met some religious Jews that actually went to Taiwan just for that reason. So yeah, it was overall great, and it's kind of funny to find these niches. Both China and Taiwan, a lot of people say, are very philo-Semitic, right? It's right, people are very interested in Jews. They don't know so much, and a lot of the things they'll mention to you very often are the most common anti-Semitic stereotypes you'll get. So it'd be like, wow, like, you're Jewish, like, your financial skills must be amazing. Like, wow, like, you control the media. That is so cool. And like, I want to do, so the same exact thing, but just told in a positive light. So I encountered that a lot. I once gave a speech. I had an opportunity to teach a class in a high school on Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement. And a girl came up to me after. She said to me, "I think you have Jewish blood."
No
I said,
way.
"Yes." And I said, "Why do you say that?" She's like, "You must be good with finances." I love Mark Zuckerberg. Yeah, so that was, and
crazy.
yeah, some things, yeah. And now, interestingly, it actually got written up in the JTA recently. You can find the article. A friend and I, or a couple friends and I, started a WhatsApp group for Chinese-speaking Jews that now has like 80 members.
Wow.
And one of them called a Jewish JTA reporter over and made it into the Jerusalem Post and Times of Israel, or weird Jewish-Chinese meetups.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
Was it weird teaching English?
No, I like teaching languages. I think teaching languages is a good skill. It helps you, right, think about your own language skills and language acquisition. So yeah, and I've always thought, like, and if you two are my student, but I love languages a lot. And I've always thought, right, if I weren't a history teacher, I'd be a foreign language teacher. And it's something I've always considered, and maybe I would find the opportunity to do that, to teach Chinese or Spanish or something like that one day. There's something very immersive, right? It's not information based. You're constantly thinking about how to be a little more interactive. So that's really great. The problem with any language class, though, and you have this in any class, but especially in languages, is just ability levels are so different. So you're coming into a class, and some kids can't string the first two letters of the alphabet together, and some kids can have complete conversations. So that's always the most difficult task.
So you said you like nature, so I'm wondering, how do you connect to nature now, and like what draws you to nature?
How do I connect to it? So it was funny, I mentioned I didn't connect to like Albany and upstate New York so much growing up, but my parents actually have a place in Western Massachusetts now, and I've come to realize that's a really great space for nature. And when I go back, I'm like, okay, like maybe this is not the best place to be like 14 without a driver's license, but at the same time now, if you can drive and if you can go out and do your own things, there's a lot of really great nature activities in the Adirondacks. I like camping a lot. Helped run this is less today. Helped run the outdoors club in college, and I love this kind of just those impromptu camping trips with friends. It's harder in New York, though. I admit I don't do it nearly as much as I would like. I like visiting national parks a lot and taking long road trips, like cross country or to different places. So sometimes I feel like recently it's been a little bit to like check the box and see these beautiful sights, and I would like to do something that just involves sitting in a natural place off the grid for a week or so.
When I was in camp 2 summers ago,
Yeah.
we hiked and camped in the Appalachian Trails.
Ooh.
Wow.
It was only 3 days, but I don't think camping's for me. I just I think it was difficult for me, at least, to spend the entire day hiking and then to not be able to shower and just do it again the next day.
It's hard, but at some
But I
point,
also kind of really appreciated that the stars were beautiful. I don't know, it was kind of just beautiful. It was also we were in campsites where people would come up to us, these others that were hiking the trails for the entire 3 months long, and we would have nice conversations with them. It was actually very nice.
That's so nice. My
cool,
math
yeah.
and chem class is going on a hiking trip, and we need chaperones.
wow, that's
if you
awesome.
wanna come.
That's cool. Is Mr. Lee leading it?
No,
yeah.
It's
Dr.
Dr.
Hika and Mr. Kraus.
Oh wow, that's awesome. Because I know I have big shoes to fill here. Being I'm the second podcast guest, or the third, after Mr. Lee. But if you want nature, I know he hiked the entire Pacific
Yep,
Crest
we
Trail.
got
I'll talk
that.
to you about that. So that is what 6 months of nonstop
Yeah.
walking. So
Crazy.
never done anything like that. But I'd like to move a little bit in that direction.
Yeah.
Not all the way.
Okay.
Nice step.
You were talking about, knowing different languages and things like that. So, what would you say is the top 5 places that you visited? Maybe some stories of why.
Oh, so that's a good question. So the top 5, I like some places just become very overrun with tourists today, and everything is just catered. So I found some places in traveling where you have a small group of tourists. There's some things there, but it's not everywhere. I think the best places that fit that bill were the post-Soviet countries I've been to. So I went to Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Armenia 3 years ago for the summer. It's another great advantage of teaching is having summer breaks and Jewish holidays and all sorts of time off to travel, and I like to take advantage of that. All those places were really stunning. Just Azerbaijan, there were very few tourists. Stayed in the one hostel in Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan. It felt like you kind of knew all the tourists that were there in that city at that time. It's really glitzy, fancy capital, but just a place that most people in the U.S. don't think about often. And then in Azerbaijan, I also had the opportunity visiting Jewish sites and Jewish communities around the world is often a big goal of my travels. And there's a group of Jews there called the Mountain Jews, or Gorsky Evrei. Don't know if there's anyone at SAR from that community, but there's a community in Brooklyn of Mountain Jews from that region. And there's Sephardic Jews from the Soviet Union. And the last all-Jewish village, they say, is a place called Kuba, Q-U-B-A, in northern Azerbaijan. And I wanted to visit. It's the last all-Jewish village outside of Israel and the United States. And I went there just to visit, expecting there to be a shul, not really expecting anything. It's rare to be surprised these days in the digital age. Everything is always planned out. And I stumbled upon this. It was kind of the reason kept changing. I think it was a Tu B'Av festival. It was right after the 9 days. There was a custom to have a big celebration, and there were hundreds and hundreds of people, mountain Jews from all over the world that flew back to this village to gather. And that was one of the coolest Jewish travel experiences, especially because I just wasn't expecting it at all. And to find the middle of Azerbaijan, a village where people knew Hebrew, and usually when Chabadniks ask me to put tefillin on, I often say no, but I did it there because it meant something there, and I felt it.
Nice. Wow. What language do they speak there?
So in the Jews mostly spoke Russian, and a lot of people can speak Russian because it was part of the Soviet Union. But the native language of Azerbaijan is called Azeri, and it's similar to Turkish. They can kind of understand each other. And the Jews actually historically have their own language called Jehuri that very few people speak, that's similar to Persian actually.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then I went to Georgia, which was also stunning. Really great hiking, mountains, beautiful medieval villages. So that, I would say, probably Georgia. I usually say, when people say, what's your one top travel recommendation? And there were lots of Israelis there, so they were taking the same suggestions.
Do you travel alone or with friends?
Usually alone. When I was in Georgia, I had a friend meet me there for a portion of the trip, and I go back and forth. I was actually in South America, and I went with my dad, so often one person, but usually I travel alone. I like to meet people. And if I do have travel partners, I try to be flexible, but that's something I'm not flexible on. You have a travel partner is a I do a lot of vetting. Yes.
Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
plan like your whole itinerary, or do you just go with the flow?
It depends. Often I have an idea of where I'm going to go, but sometimes things go wrong, places are filled, but I like it just like a hobby of mine to plan trips or plan things in the future. Maybe it's more of an obsession than a hobby at this point. So,
My dad's the same. He
Yeah.
plans all of our friends' trips just because he enjoys booking flights. It's so weird.
Yeah, so
My
I
brother don't
yeah.
get it. How many languages do you speak?
So it's interesting because what it means to speak a language can mean very different
How many
things,
languages
right?
can you have a full conversation in?
Yeah, even those things, right? A full conversation. It's hard to say. So there are like 8, including English. There are 8 languages that I've studied
That's
or
crazy.
speak. But all of them at different levels. I speak Mandarin and Spanish quite well. Like those ones I could have like this conversation in, and then others not like Hebrew and Arabic. I could have a conversation in. Maybe a little better in Arabic than Hebrew. A little Russian, a little Portuguese, a little French. So, but all
I take
different.
French.
You take French. Wow. Yeah.
Can you say your favorite Mandarin phrase
My favorite Mandarin phrase.
so we could hear it?
And what it means too.
Yeah.
Like, could we do the intro
Yeah.
in Mandarin?
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's
So
funny.
three psychos. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you say that in Mandarin?
Sanga Fengzi.
Should we do it?
Yeah, okay.
Fengzi is a crazy.
Oh.
Sanga Fengzi. That's like
Amazing.
That's a nice way.
Thank
That's
you.
so
Yeah.
cool.
Well, Mandarin has because you have a very tonal opening, and Mandarin is actually a tonal language, which we don't have in. I mean, we have in
Yeah.
English a little. Like if you say what or what, that is different.
Yeah.
But in Mandarin, right? If you say ma and mama, that's mother, and if you say ma, that's horse. If you say
So
ma, it
interesting.
means to scold someone. So it's just very right. It sounds a little sing-songy from an
Yeah.
English perspective
That's
when
so
people
cool.
talk. Yeah.
Do you watch anime?
I don't. My sister is a big anime fan, and
Which
people
one?
have I know she got my dad to watch Avatar: The Last Airbender
So
with her,
good.
and a lot of people. Yeah, I think I would like to try to watch it. I think part of the problem is when I was in college, right? My first year, I lived in a dorm, and there was a common room, and I wasn't so into anime, but many people there were into anime and Super Smash Brothers, and those were the 2 main activities, and they were watching Attack on Titan.
Ooh.
My friends
And
love
this
that.
is just such a brutal, violent show. And every time I would walk in, right, someone would be getting eaten in some monstrous way by some giant. And I can't say this was a good introduction to anime. So
Oh my
I think I need a reintroduction.
When I was in 6th grade, my friends had like an anime phase, and I was forced to watch Hunter x Hunter. I don't recommend. You know how sometimes you have like a reoccurring dream?
Yeah.
I have the same reoccurring dream
Oh my God.
about this one Hunter x Hunter clip. So I really do not recommend. But do you know Sadie Ritter? She's a student. She's in our
No, I'm
grade.
sure I've seen, but yeah.
she
she's-
loves
She's
anime.
the biggest
Yes.
such Hunter x Hunter fan. So you could
Yeah.
talk to her about it. She could probably convince you.
Can we revisit your college days?
Revisit my college
How
days.
was
Wow.
it? What did you study?
You're
What were you
entering some
interested in?
forbidden territory. No, just kidding. It wasn't that crazy. So college, I went to the University of Chicago.
Ooh.
From 2016 to 2020.
COVID.
Yeah, so it was the very end. It was so it wasn't as some people really had years canceled by COVID. For me, it was like the last few months, which was too bad, but it was
Did you have
not.
graduation.
Yeah, it was but it was just those 2 months, and it was not the end of the world. And I studied Middle Eastern studies and history there. I took a lot of like Arabic classes and language classes and a lot of history classes. Yeah, in U Chicago, they say the motto is where fun goes to die.
Yeah.
That's what I
So it was really a grind. Like, and I think maybe this colors a lot of my. Not that I'm teaching 9th and 10th grade. I'm not teaching college, but maybe some of that colors my experience. 3 pages? Who has that kind of time? It's like when I was your age, I had to write 10 pages a week, and that's not really an exaggeration. Like that was just constant. Here's another paper. Here's another
So you
paper.
really do think it was where fun goes to die?
I mean, like everything, it was sarcastic, a little bit tongue in cheek, but the
There's always a little truth to a lie.
it was grounded in a kernel of truth. But I think a lot of people there enjoyed it, right? It's
Yeah.
known for like if you don't like academics and you don't like in a dorm common room people talking about whatever pretentious subject of the day is what Plato said or Socrates said, then you're probably not going to enjoy it
Yeah.
there so much. But if you are into that kind of thing, then you would enjoy it. This beautiful old campus. I loved exploring Chicago and the city. It's kind of a bubble for some students, but every weekend I would try to go find a different neighborhood to walk around. Yeah, there's the outdoors club. And Chicago's just a really nice city in the summer. It'd be like in New York if you could just, a really hot day when it's 90 degrees out in July, you could just go jump in a lake every day
Wow.
for like half the price that it costs to live in New York.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did you know you wanted to be a teacher? Or
It's a good question. I know I'm saying that a lot, but there are so many good questions here. Did I know I wanted? I mean, it's kind of hard to say. I haven't been, always someone with such a 5-year plan or so much
Yeah.
foresight about what I want to do. Teaching was always an option. I always knew I was not a math and science person, and that just like even no matter how much you trained me, I would not be a programmer. I could not be a physicist. I could, and as a result, that kind of closes a lot of jobs in the modern world too. And because of that, right, you're left with some options. I think for most people, the options are kind of teaching or law school and be a lawyer. And I've considered law, and it's still not entirely off the table. I've always considered it, but for now, I'm satisfied. I'm satisfied teaching, and I've heard mixed things about the legal profession from different people who either enjoy it or don't. And it was it was kind of a logical step where I found jobs. It was kind of always one of those two options. I always like to write more. That's like kind of one regret is like something I'd like to do more. It's more like journalism, interview people, find things that people aren't writing about and write more about it. I published a few articles in the past and I haven't in a while. And that's something I'd really like to get more into.
what do you like about that?
What do I like?
Journalism.
Well, I love reading journalism. That especially that kind of like investigative journalism that takes a niche part of the world you had no idea existed and does an expose on it. So I remember one of the like earliest transformative ones was about the Chinatown Kitchen Network and just about the system of jobs that connects the individuals working behind the scenes in Chinese restaurants. That's often very exploitive, and how people come from China and find themselves in the system, something I knew nothing about. And I feel like there are just a lot of parts of the world that I don't know, but also there's some niche aspects of the world that I do have an insight on that people haven't written about. I live in Crown Heights in Brooklyn, which is very Chabad world, and there are all sorts of weird pockets of Chabad world that I feel like could be written about. There are a lot of ex-Chassids that live there.
Still live there.
In Crown Heights, yes, you mentioned you were an alt shul family, or and yes, you think yes,
I think.
yes.
There's only 2.
You're only 2, I see. And lots of just cool immigrant communities, unique ones. And I want to be, able to kind of write that. And there's something satisfactory about it, right? You're producing something. It's like, if you're a painter, you might like looking at art, but there's something very satisfying about painting something and saying like, this is mine.
Yeah.
I produced it. Now people can
Right.
look at it.
I agree.
I feel like we're always
Yeah.
seeing the same headlines in the media, but we never like learn about niche topics like that. It's really interesting.
Yeah, there's one group that is the White House reporter, reporting on White House press briefings or the breaking news of the day. But that's not, I'm more interested if I would do like long form investigative reporting or, more analysis after the fact. Talked recently about, maybe I'll wind up getting around writing a chapter or writing an article that there's so many ethnic labor networks in New York. To certain jobs where almost every single person in the job is held down by one group of people. And things like all the halal food cart guys in Manhattan, you see in Midtown, they're always Egyptian. All the bodegas on the corners, they're always from Yemen. Right? Bengali taxi drivers, Albanian supers. My super is Albanian, then I learned everyone else's super is Albanian too. And how you have these networks start and how they're maintained. And I think there's a lot that could be written about that if I had to pick one topic right now.
Interesting. How many countries have you visited?
So sometimes what counts as a country can, be up for, it could be a little, right? Taiwan is not a UN recognized country. I would say it's a country.